Welcome to Heaven Glimpse. For those who are new here, our mission is to share genuine Christian testimonies from around the world, spreading the powerful message of God's kingdom. We focus on stories about Jesus, the afterlife, heaven and hell, and other Bible-related topics. We invite you to become a member of this family by subscribing to our channel. God bless you as you do so. Today's experience was sent to us by a sister named Lisa. She died and was taken to hell. Part of what she saw were children. Kindly stay to the end to fully understand her experience. Hi, my name is Lisa and my life was a constant whirlwind of pain and addiction. When I first met Mike, I thought he was my savior. But as time went on, the light turned to darkness and I found myself trapped in a relationship that was tearing me apart. Mike and I shared more than just a home. We shared an addiction that consumed our lives. We were both heavily into drugs, using them as an escape from our problems. The drugs changed us, turned us into people we never wanted to be. Mike became more aggressive and our arguments grew more intense. The loving man I once knew was replaced by someone I hardly recognized. Someone who hurt me in ways I never thought possible. The physical abuse started gradually with shoves and slaps, but it quickly escalated. I would cover my bruises with makeup and hide my pain behind forced smiles, hoping that things would somehow get better. One day, a particular argument took a turn for the worse, started like any other fight with raised voices and harsh words. We were both high and our tempers flared uncontrollably. I can't even remember what the argument was about, but I remember the fear that gripped me when I saw the rage in Mike's eyes. In a fit of anger, Mike grabbed a heavy vase from the table. I barely had time to react before he swung it at me with all his strength. The vase shattered against my head, sending shards of glass and a wave of blinding pain through my skull. I crumpled to the floor, my vision blurring as blood began to pour from the wound. The next few moments were a haze of agony and confusion. I could hear Mike shouting, his voice distant and frantic. He tried to lift me, his hands trembling as he attempted to stop the bleeding. The room spun around me, the edges of my vision darkening as I struggled to stay conscious. He managed to get me into the car, the drive to the hospital a blur of flashing light. I could feel the life draining out of me with each passing second, the blood gushing from my head wound in a relentless stream. My breaths came in shallow, ragged gasps, each one a struggle against the darkness. As we sped towards the hospital, I felt my strength slipping away. The world around me faded, and the pain that had consumed me for so long began to dull. I knew I was dying, and there was a strange sense of peace in that realization. The chaos of my life, the pain and the fear, all seemed to dissolve as I drifted towards the inevitable. By the time we reached the hospital, it was too late. I could hear the distant sounds of doctors and nurses rushing to help, their voices muffled and far away. The moment of my death came quietly amidst the chaos. I felt a sudden, overwhelming release as if a heavy burden had been lifted from my chest. The pain that had been my constant companion for so long vanished instantly. It was replaced by a sensation of lightness, a freedom from the physical body that had endured so much suffering. I realized, with a sense of wonder and detachment, that I had died. As I floated above the scene, I saw my body lying motionless on the hospital bed. Medical staff surrounded me, their faces etched with concentration and urgency. I could see the bright lights of the emergency room, the sterile white walls, and the monitors that displayed my failing vital signs. Mike was there too, his face a mask of anguish and guilt. His hands stained with my blood as he stood helplessly by. The sensation of being out of my body was strange and liberating. I felt no pain, no fear, just a serene awareness. It was as if I had shed the heavy, broken shell of my physical self and emerged as something lighter and more pure. There was an incredible clarity to my thoughts, a sense of peace and understanding that I had never known in life. I looked down at my own body, the lifeless form that had carried me through so much turmoil. It seemed foreign to me now, just a vessel that had served its purpose and was no longer needed. The connection to my physical self was severed, and I felt an indescribable freedom from all the pain and suffering I had endured. Without warning, I was seized by an invisible force, yanking me away from the calm observation of the hospital room. I felt a violent pull, as if unseen hands had gripped my very essence and were dragging me down into an abyss. The descent was rapid and terrifying. The comforting light of the hospital and the ethereal peace I had experienced were quickly replaced by an overwhelming darkness. I was plunged into a void, an endless expanse of blackness that swallowed all sense of direction and time. There was no up or down, no left or right, just an all-encompassing darkness that seemed to stretch on forever. The temperature increased rapidly, and I could feel the oppressive weight of the heat pressing down on me, stifling and relentless. The darkness was alive with sounds, agonized screams, cries of despair, and the chilling echoes of countless souls in torment. These sounds surrounded me, growing louder and more intense as I was dragged deeper into the abyss. The screams were filled with such raw pain and suffering that they pierced through the darkness, making my very essence shudder with fear. As I continued to descend, the darkness began to give way to faint, flickering glows. At first, they were just distant sparks, but they grew brighter and more numerous as I was pulled further down. These glows revealed glimpses of a horrific landscape, a twisted, nightmarish realm of fire and shadow. Then I saw them, countless souls writhing in agony. They were scattered across the landscape, each one engulfed in their own personal torment. The sight was beyond anything I could have ever imagined, a tableau of endless suffering and despair. Their faces were in pain, their bodies twisted and broken, as they cried out for mercy that would never come. This was hell, a place of unimaginable torment and eternal suffering. The initial sensations of entering this infernal realm were overwhelming, a stark contrast to the peaceful detachment I had felt moments before. The reality of my situation began to sink in, and with it, a growing sense of terror. The first soul I noticed was that of a middle-aged man. His face twisted in a grimace of unrelenting pain. He was shackled to a jagged rock, his flesh seared and blistered from the intense heat radiating from the surrounding lava. Flames licked at his body, never fully consuming him but causing perpetual, unbearable pain. His screams were a raw, guttural sound, echoing through the air with a desperation that spoke of endless suffering. Nearby, an elderly man was chained to a spiked wheel that slowly turned, grinding his body against the sharp metal protrusions. His skin was torn and blooded, and his cries for mercy were heart-wrenching, a plea that would never be answered. The demons that operated the wheel took pleasure in his torment, their faces alight with sadistic glee as they watched him suffer. The cycle of capture, torture, and release was endless, a perpetual nightmare from which he could not escape. They begged for mercy, for an end to their pain, but there was no relief to be found. As I moved through this sea of suffering, I saw men from all walks of life, rich and poor, young and old, all sharing the same fate. There was no distinction, no escape from the torment. Their faces were etched with an eternal agony, eyes wide with terror, and mouths open in ceaseless screams. Another man was submerged up to his neck in a pit of boiling tar. The viscous liquid bubbled and churned, burning his skin and filling his lungs with toxic fumes. His face was a mask of agony, eyes rolling back in his head as he struggled to breathe. The demons surrounding the pit jabbed at him with spears, their laughter a cruel counterpoint to his desperate cries. In a section of hell that seemed particularly desolate, I saw children, subjected to the same unrelenting torment as the adults. The sight of their suffering was a reminder of the absolute cruelty and hopelessness that permeated this realm. The children were scattered across the charred, rocky ground, their small bodies twisted in agony. Unlike the adults, who had been consumed by their own sins and despair, the children seemed bewildered and terrified, their innocent faces covered with pain and fear. Honest, I don't know what these children were in this place of torment. It was after this sight that I began to hear a voice. "Lisa, Lisa, can you hear me?" The voice was urgent, filled with a mixture of concern and desperation. The voice grew louder, clearer, and suddenly, I felt a tug, a pull that drew me away from the depths of hell and back towards the realm of the living. In an instant, I found myself back in the hospital room, my body lying motionless on the bed. Doctors and nurses surrounded me. I could feel the pressure building, a sensation of being pulled back into my body. I opened my eyes to a blur of faces, doctors with masks smeared with sweat, nurses with worried brows, and in the midst of them all, a figure I recognized with overwhelming relief. It was Mike, his eyes red-rimmed with tears, his hands gripping mine as if holding onto a lifeline. As I lay there, weak and trembling, I realized the gravity of what had just transpired. I had been to hell and back, literally, and now, against all odds, I was alive. The memory of the torment I had witnessed lingered, a chilling reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that awaited beyond. As I lay in the hospital bed, recovering from the ordeal that had taken me to the brink of death and back, a profound sense of gratitude washed over me. The experience had been a wake-up call. With each passing day, I felt the grip of drugs loosening its hold on me. It was a slow and arduous process, marked by moments of doubt and temptation, but I clung to a newfound strength, a strength that came not from within myself, but from a higher power. God's grace had sustained me through the darkest moments of my life, pulling me back from the brink and guiding me towards a path of healing and redemption. As I reflected on my journey, I felt a deep conviction stirring within my soul. I knew that I had been given a second chance, a chance to turn away from the destructive cycle of addiction and embrace a life of purpose and meaning. It was a journey of faith and surrender, a journey that I knew I could not walk alone. I made a solemn vow to God. I pledged to follow His path, to seek His guidance in all that I did, and to live a life that honored His love and mercy. And over the years God had been faithful in keeping strong over my drug addiction. I felt compelled to share my story, not out of a desire to cause panic or fear, but out of a deep conviction that the world needed to hear of God's transformative power. I wanted to call on every parent, every guardian, to guide their children in God's path while they were young, to instill in them a foundation of faith and love that would carry them through life's trials and temptations. I had become serious with God in a way that I had never been before. My faith was no longer just a comforting thought or a distant hope. It was a living, breathing reality that infused every aspect of my being. I prayed earnestly for strength and wisdom, knowing that God's grace would sustain me through the challenges that lay ahead. As I looked towards the future, I knew that my journey of faith and recovery would be a testament to God's unfailing love and mercy. And with each step forward, I would strive to live a life that honored Him and reflected His grace to the world. That does it for today's experience. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe and be blessed.